Hi, I'm Matthew Horner, and as the Finance Director, it is my duty to present the annual accounts for 2020-21 to the Council of Governors at this annual members' meeting. And whilst 2021 was a very different year, it is still pleasing to be able to report that the Foundation Trust met its planned financial metrics for the year. At the start of the pandemic, the financial framework within which we normally operate completely changed to allow all the staff in the NHS to focus their attentions on treating the patients and supporting the hospital. All the normal financial arrangements were suspended and replaced by a regime aligned to the response required to manage the pandemic. For the first 6 months, the Trust submitted invoice to retrospectively recover all the costs associated with the pandemic. The regime changed for the second half of the year with a block value allocated to the Trust based on a predicted level of expenditure that would deliver a break-even position by the end of the year. It's pleasing to report that the break-even position was delivered for the year ending the 31st of March 2021, and the Trust received an unmodified audit opinion when the accounts were audited by our external auditors, Deloitte. The Trust capital expenditure exceeded £30 million with investments into the infrastructure of the estate, equipment and digital programmes. The charity was also very fortunate to receive significant donations in relation to both the pandemic and other fundraising activities. As already mentioned, the financial regime was very different for the year and was introduced solely to allow the NHS to appropriately manage the pandemic without the burden of the normal financial governance arrangements. The business as usual performance management arrangements were suspended with a light touch approach introduced. You will note from the table that the Trust reported a break-even position for the year, but you will also note the step change in both income and expenditure. The Trust incurred additional costs over the previous year of over £50 million, with the majority relating to dealing with the pandemic, which was offset by direct income in the first 6 months and a block allocation in the latter half of the year, with the full value of COVID spend around £27 million. The block funding arrangement has rolled forward into the first half of this year as the NHS continues to manage the pandemic. An updated arrangement is planned for the second half of the year and we await confirmation of the detail, but it's anticipated that some form of block arrangement will remain in place that will introduce an efficiency target but will also allow attention to focus on planning for 2022-23. This slide provides a summary breakdown of the expenditure incurred by the Trust for the year and highlights the continued split of 2/3 pay and 1/3 non-pay. It should also be noted that the exceptional pandemic expenditure reported of £23.6 million does not include the costs of personal protective equipment, as these were procured by and delivered by the national team. Throughout the pandemic, and to manage surges in COVID patients, the configuration of the hospital has been in a constant state of flux, with regular changes to ward specialities and bed configurations. It has not been possible to plan for a steady state while inpatient numbers continue to fluctuate. As such, financial planning and forecasting has also remained a challenge. If we compare the expenditure patterns across the two care groups using the same months over 2 years, we see a very different cost profile. The planned care group's costs have fallen as they are unable to access theatres and beds to deliver the planned or elective work. In contrast, the unplanned care group's costs have increased, particularly in urgent and emergency care and children's services as they respond to the acute activity pressures coming through the front door. Throughout the year, we have invested £30.3 million into a range of improvements and developments, medical equipment and IT infrastructure. The main elements of the investment programme in 2020-21 included £10.6 million invested into the pandemic response, covering a range of equipment items and site configuration projects to provide a safe patient environment. Our ongoing investment into digital programmes and £3.6 million invested into replacement medical equipment. Total capital investment over the last 6 years is in excess of £125 million. Our active investment programme to improve and modernise our services has seen us invest £60 million into new developments, £39 million into IT infrastructure and £12 million into medical equipment. We're also planning to spend around £30 million this year, which will include the conclusion of a number of COVID-related projects. Each year, the Trust's appointed external auditors, who are currently Deloitte, independently review the statutory financial statements to ensure they represent a true and fair view of the Trust's financial position and that they have been prepared in accordance with the Department of Health and Social Care's Group Accounting Manual. I'm pleased to be able to report that once again our external auditors have provided an unmodified audit opinion on the Trust's financial statements. In addition, they also reviewed a number of key documents and processes as highlighted, from which I have no significant issues to raise with the Council of Governors. As in previous years, Deloitte will present their findings to a meeting of the Council of Governors at a later date. When the Trust received its good rating for use of resources from the CQC in 2019-20, the inspection assessed how productively the Trust was using its resources to provide high quality and sustainable care for patients. They explored a range of key lines of inquiry in awarding the good rating, and they commented positively about our financial performance, our embedded approach to quality improvement, and our strong collaborative working across the system. The graph has been updated to include the latest information on the model hospital, which evaluates the overall productivity of the trusts compared to the national average and peers, which forms part of their use of resources assessment. It uses a currency called a Weighted Activity Unit, or WOW, and it is a standard unit used to describe an amount of any type of healthcare work. A WOW represents the average amount of clinical activity that can be produced for £3,500 for the average hospital. Over recent years, the Trust's average WOW cost has improved, and for 2019-20, its average WOW cost was £3,286, which indicates the Trust benchmarks quite well when measuring its relative efficiency against the national average and against its peers. I will now provide a brief update on Bradford Hospital's charity, whose purpose relates solely to the services provided by the hospital, with particular emphasis on enhancing the services we deliver. It allows staff to identify both large and small valuable differences that the charity can support to deliver real benefits to patients and staff. The value of the fund at the 31st of March was just over £2.3 million, with us raising over £1 million in donations and spending around £900,000 in the year, supporting the purchase of equipment, patient welfare initiatives, and contributing to the training and development and welfare of our staff, with almost £400,000 relating to the reinvestment of donations we received during the pandemic. This slide provides a breakdown of the total expenditure and demonstrates where the specific COVID-related donations were invested, with a particular emphasis on the welfare of both staff and patients, and in particular the wobble rooms created in a number of locations to provide a breakout facility for staff to step away from their clinical environment. This slide highlights the scale of the effort and volumes of PPE that have been utilised since the start of the pandemic. We've used in excess of 32 million items, all of which have been stored both on-site and off-site, and we have carried stock of over 1 million items at particular times. We've used over 5 million masks, 500,000 gowns, 22 million gloves and 3.5 million aprons, and they just form a small part of the 50+ product lines that have been managed and distributed by the PPE team. As mentioned previously, the vast majority of the items have been procured and distributed by the national team, but there have been excellent examples of collaboration and mutual aid across West Yorkshire, particularly at the height of the pandemic when a number of product lines were in short supply. It should be noted that through the efforts of all our teams, but in particular our procurement teams, we never ran out of PPE. As you can imagine, distributing such high volumes across the Trust has been a logistical challenge, which has been managed by the dedicated PPE team and an army of volunteers to whom I am very grateful. And finally, can I please express my sincere thanks to the finance team, who throughout the pandemic have not only helped each other out by cross-team working, but have volunteered to undertake numerous roles across the Trust, whether that be helping out on the doors, distributing PPE, or supporting the vaccination centre. I'm immensely proud of them, and even more so following our recent National Peer Accreditation Award as a team. Well done, guys.